welcome everyone to the May 20th Arborist call. We've got a pretty full agenda today, so we'll get moving. For those that may not be familiar with Arborist, we kind of follow a similar format every week. We just have a brief intro. We do some implementation status updates as needed, and then we just have a variety of discussions on whatever the right topics might be for a given week. Arborist calls, if you're not familiar, they're on a bi-weekly basis now, where protocol contributors get together to talk about upgrade timelines and process, research and development efforts, design, implementation of new protocol features, blockers, etc. The goal overall is to make Zcash protocol development more accessible for a wider set of participants, and also just a way to plug into the community and provide transparency into the things that the teams are working on. Anyone can participate, anyone interested in learning about protocol development or contributing. If you want to present, or you've got a topic, you don't want to present, but you want to suggest a topic to be discussed, you can email me, Steven@electriccoin.co, and we will get it worked into the schedule. Especially having these every 2 weeks, we usually have plenty of flexibility in terms of what we discuss. So let me back up a few slides, the agenda. So we've got an implementation status update on Ziggurat, and then we've got just a number of discussions. So what I'm going to do is actually stop sharing my screen, and then if I need to bring it back up for some reason, I'll do that, but that way I can see everyone, and I think people can see actually a little bit better as well. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then if someone would like to share or just talk about Ziggurat, whatever you'd like to do.
I'll just talk to it if that's all right.
Oh yeah, perfect.
So we are in Zebra. We are just coming up to our 10th alpha release, which is kind of exciting, actually. Double digits.
Nice.
Won't have a milestone like that for a while. And recently we've been working mainly on Network Upgrade 5, unsurprisingly. So we have been integrating Libra Zcash to deal with the, let me think what that is now, the non-malleable transaction IDs, and to them we're going to soon be working on the chain history, also using the Libra Zcash implementation. We figured there wasn't much we could do to parallelize any of that implementation apart from doing that all in separate tasks anyway, as we're already doing in Zebra. So it seemed to be wise to just reuse that code to speed up our implementation. We've also been doing some work with the Ziggurat team. So they're the network integration testing that's funded by the ZOMG. And they gave us some security things that we needed to fix. And I think that we're just going through the second round of fixes. We did a bunch of initial fixes, and now we are looking at some of those again and making sure that they are working really well. So that's mainly what's been happening with Zebra. We've been looking at some of the test vectors that have been produced by ECC, and we are still keen to check that the transaction v5 test vectors are ready and working. I think we're just about ready to merge our last transaction v5 serialization work, so we'll be able to start using those test vectors then. I think that maybe this would be a good time for Marek to talk about Frost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was sure. That was next up. So
great.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Marek, a new engineer at the Zcash Foundation, and I'd like to give you a brief update on Frost. So a while ago, we implemented the minor security issues reported in the security audit, and recently we designed a unified message format for the Frost protocol so that all users understand each other's messages, and so that it's easy for the users of Frost to use it as a Rust library. We're trying to keep the design general and agnostic of any specific use cases. We're currently implementing this, or more specifically, Alfredo is currently working on it. I'm not sure if he's on this call now.
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah. So anyway, the implementation supports key generation with a trusted dealer at the moment. And the next step will be to implement the distributed key generation so that the trusted dealer is not needed. And yep, that's the summary for now, I'd say.
I just also want to give a shout out to Dara and some of the other ECC folks who've been kind of collaborating with Chelsea on some of the crypto stuff behind the scenes as well.
It's fun. I'm always up for more crypto. To my detriment.
Yeah. All right, very good. Thank you. And is it Marek, or is that how you pronounce your name, Marek?
Yeah, Marek.
Marek. Okay. Welcome, by the way. And yeah, sounds like great work, great progress.
Yeah, welcome.
All right. Next up, Tara mentioned test vectors. So test vector progress. Strad, I think Strad's on the call. You want to give us an update, Strad? I know you've been looking at a few things.
Yeah, mentioned test vectors. So I'm just looking through which ones we have merged at the moment. But yeah, we have the V5 test vectors and zip244 up. That's just sitting there ready for people to review. But it should be accurate to what is in the spec at this time, including the change that merged all of the clarified zip244 to move the pieces that were in zip225 back into zip244 because we originally wrote it in case one or the other wouldn't get in, but then they both got in. So things are a bit simpler now. And yeah, that includes all of the fix-ups there. So the orchard commitments, I think that should actually they just needs be good to get another review on that, but that's good to go. The main next one then is the key components, which is sort of the big one that provides basic test vectors for a key tree and then notes received and sent by that. So that checks basically the whole stack, which is that should be not too far away. I think we just need to get the commitments in, and then I think we're basically done. I think we've got some of the smaller ones like the there's some note encryption test vectors there, and we already have Sensimir in place, so we can put together a simple Merkle tree test vector set for that as well. But at this point, I think the majority of them all are sort of sitting there, ready to go. It's just the key components is the main one that we're just tweaking up and making sure it exactly matches what's in the spec.
Thank you.
There is a new version of the spec, by the way. I can just briefly go through the things that have changed. Nothing very significant, but you want me to share my screen with that?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, if I can. Sure, finding the right window. Yes, it will. There we go. Right, yes. So let's see, there was a change to the type of Merkle CRH orchard. So basically for sprout and sapling, the Merkle hash values are defined as bit strings. And for orchard, it's more natural to define them as x coordinates of the Pallas curve. So it doesn't actually change the meaning of the spec. It's just a clarification. So Orchard incoming viewing keys include the diversifier key that you use to encrypt a diversifier index. So it clarified the difference between an incoming viewing key and a private key for the key agreement. This is just tidying up the security proof. So I'd been using the finding a discrete log relation and the discrete log problem as kind of interchangeable, which they are, but this reference proves it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And there was a minor error in the size of the actions orchard. And also we clarify that V4 transactions continue to use the zip243 signature hashing.
Cool.
And that's pretty much it. Some minor notational things. Yeah, that's everything.
Lovely, thank you.
All right, very good. Questions about any of that, test vectors or anything? Seems like I don't think I missed anything in the chat. Nope. Okay, moving on. Next topic that was suggested was to talk about like when do we set testnet activation height? Our target for, I mean, just to kind of update on the Zcash D side, we're looking for about kind of mid-June-ish for the release, where we would have all the implementation basically done, where we could set, you know, the activation height in that release. That would be Zcash D 450 would be the release. There's an Arborist call on the 17th, which is well, I think 4 weeks from today would be accurate. We could talk about it in there if you wanted, you know, just to kind of, again, we would be roughly complete with the implementation at that point. So we could talk about what would be a good height. We'll also check with Marshall and DevInfra, the DevInfra team at ECC. One of the things we typically do to get a more consistent hash rate going on testnet is spin up a few extra miners ahead of time. So we get kind of a more normalized hash rate. So our prediction for activation height is a little more accurate. Sometimes the testnet's not super active. So if we announce a release that sets testnet activation height for a given NU, a lot of people jump on, a lot of people start mining, and you expect the activation to occur in 2 weeks, and it occurs, you know, the day after tomorrow. So we typically spin that up a little bit ahead of time to normalize some hash rate. But I don't know if anyone else on the team, either Foundation or ECC or anyone has any thoughts, but that's kind of roughly our schedule. So
I think in general, we know that Zebra isn't going to have all of the validation ready for testnet activation, but we'll be pretty close. So okay. We're happy to go when you go. We're flexible to go a little later if that works for you. Okay. We're hoping to have almost all of the Orchard validation in place because that's the riskiest part of the network upgrade.
Okay, sounds good. Does that sound okay? Sean, Stradera, everyone?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, sounds good to me.
All right. Let's see, what else? We're moving through these pretty quickly. Ziggurat testing results. Does someone have an update on that or want to discuss the result? I saw in one of the Discord channels some of the results that they'd posted, but I don't know if anyone else has any more detail. Dodger, so I think, go ahead. Yeah.
I think some of those results were sent to the Zcash D and the Zebra teams privately because they were potential security issues. I know that we've created tickets for all of ours, and I think there's a Zcash D ticket out as well for those.
Right. Yeah, we actually have a couple. of tickets, one Zcash D, one Zcash. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if they
like.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sven.
I wanted to ask actually about one of them. So there was the actually, I'm just going to very quickly check that this is one that has an open issue on the Zebra side.
Good idea, Strad.
Yes, just before saying anything. I actually don't. Okay, I don't know if I'm not searching. I thought I'd seen it in my GitHub history, but actually I will leave it until I can. I'll come back to this later if I can confirm.
The two tickets are the most recent tickets on Zcash, and Liberal Zcash.
Well, I have those ones. I'm just trying to check that the equivalent on Zebra is. Yes, I found it. Yes, it was a public PR that was merged. Okay, so the compact size issue. I wanted to just check what's actually happening on the Zebra side here and what the issue was there, because on the Libra Zcash side, the reason the limit was where it was is because I was exactly duplicating the behavior of Zcash, of the Zcash D's Bitcoin inherited serialization logic. As in, like, the default behavior for compact size, a lot of simpler implementations don't even stick any limit on. And I was being careful to ensure that the limit placed on it in the Rust code was identical to what's in the C++ code, which is that 32 megabyte limit. So my question is, rejecting things that go above the current protocol message limit seems like it could have unintended consensus effects later on.
Yeah, because aren't the other things that use compact sizes that are not
compact sizes used all over the place, not just in the consensus code. Yeah. And it feels like something that could, like, trip us up later if this isn't just a if this is a change to the serialization code rather than a separate check in the consensus rules limiting those pieces. So what was the problem it was causing for Zebra D?
So previously Zebra just had no limit on the compact size serialization or deserialization, which meant that if we happen to accidentally forget to implement, so we have a trait that allows us to calculate a size that it's safe to deserialize once we know the size of the underlying type. If we forget to do that, then this was just a defense in depth. So we already have precautions in place to limit memory usage. So we're very flexible. If you want to make it a consensus rule that compact sizes greater than 32 megabytes are not allowed, then we would be happy to conform to that.
Yeah, it's
not an intentional consensus rule,
but that limit has existed for 11 years.
Yeah, sure.
So if you want to document that somewhere. It was in the import of Bitcoin code from SVN. So yeah, that's how compact size has been defined and, like, is defined. And I don't want to presume there isn't something in the depths of the Bitcoin inherited plumbing that actually potentially leverages it beyond just what the network layer claims to be able to support.
So
I'm just checking.
I checked very carefully.
Go on. Okay.
So for Zebra's implementation, I checked very carefully that we don't use compact size to serialize anything that is not sent across the network. So when Zebra serializes things, we use native Rust types and serialize them down to bytes. We don't use compact sizes in our database, except when they are associated with the network. So it's a safe limit for us for now. It might not be a safe limit for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't I remember that Zip, is it Is it 221, the zip that defines the fly client stuff? Uses compact size.
We're using LibRust Zcash for that. So we will be using your limit, not ours. But you're right, that is actually one case where we shouldn't be doing that. So yeah, we should probably do that as a precaution.
Yeah, I mean, where is that compact size serialized? So actually the places it uses it though, at least in the node format, are serializing like integers. So it can't be particularly large in theory.
Yeah, but it's serializing block heights. So technically a block height could be higher than it's incomparable to the size of something that's sent over the network. I mean, in practice, you're not going to reach that block height, but that's. So it's also used for the sapling transaction count. So yeah, in principle, that could go up to more than 2 to the 32.
Yeah, with the limit, at least in, what is this?
No, it can be, actually it can be at most 2 to the 32 because of the limit on the Merkle tree depth.
Yeah, and the limit placed on compact size is 2 to the 26 in the C++ code.
Okay, so we could actually hit that in an sapling TX count.
Yes, we could.
We should define what happens there. That's an oversight because I thought that the limit on compact size was much greater than that.
Once we've sorted that out, let me know and we'll update Zebra to conform to whatever internal limit you decide is the right limit.
Yeah, actually, in practice though, Dara, that limit's going to not be the case because that field sapling orchard TX count is restricted to a single epoch. Because trees are reset across network upgrades.
Yeah, well, we probably get away with it, but still, it's a design flaw.
Yeah,
which we should not replicate for Orchard.
I would think for Orchard we've just duplicated, we've just directly copy pasted.
We should fix that then.
I would feel best if we had documentation for this kind of issue for those sites. Saying we've analyzed this to see if it impacts consensus and we believe it does not for this reason. Or if we had a more comprehensive design spec for Zcash D, it could go there.
That would be
ideally.
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
I actually, this was an oversight because I actually thought that compact size went up to 2 to the 64, but it doesn't as implemented.
Yeah.
All right. So the next item, anything else on that before we move on? I know Deirdre has to drop off in about 30 minutes, so I want to work through as much as we can. We're making good progress today, by the way. Anything else on that?
Particularly on Ziggurat network testing,
Right.
It is very hard to work out exactly what the network stack should be doing, or even the range of acceptable behaviors. So something that I think we could work on together after NU5 is working out how much of the Bitcoin spec we want to inherit for the network messages, and trying to define sensible behavior for a network stack. Because I know the Ziggurat team identified things like closing the connection on an unexpected message isn't actually a good behavior in Zebra and things like that. So we would appreciate, I don't know. So it feels like some of them would be protocol requirements and some of them might be here's a good recommended design. And we're going to have to do that work anyway.
Yeah, it'd be good to, once we're through the NU5 gauntlet, sit down on for that, because we've also been trying to sort of figure out like, because the Zcash decode base is itself quite far behind. Well, we have those tendrils going forward in terms of like certain pieces, like, you know, I was able to pull back the Tor ephemeral hidden service stuff, or changes to the RPCs in certain cases. But like, given the fact that just wholesale rebasing on a modern version is out of the question because it's just too much of a moving target. We're sort of, you know, having to figure out exactly how far forward we're likely to want to be able to go in terms of backporting things. And the network stack is one we definitely want to get stuff in. So one of the things I've got planned on the soonish timescale, so probably after the next release, is rediscovering what that forward look would be and sort of building up a DAG that actually describes what that pathway would be for all these potential backports. And so we could have a look at like the effect of those on our current network behavior. As far as like because I would not be surprised if there are changes from upstream that to Zcash that would affect materially how it behaves in the network, even if it's not technically a versioned peer-to-peer message change.
I looked at the Bitcoin definition of compact size, and it does go up to that. It's specified to go up to 2 to the 64 minus 1. So that's why I thought it did. I guess I hadn't looked at the code.
Well,
but we might need to change that. It's
well,
technically
actually,
a bug relative to the current spec.
Right. Well, there, if that's the case, if that where it's specified, well, I mean, again, where is it specified, I guess, is the question. Is that the Bitcoin wiki?
Not the wiki, it's the developer reference.
Okay. It might just be something, yeah, we have to like fork it, or like have it one of those ones where like in certain cases we enforce the limit and others we don't.
Yeah.
But we should be clear where those are.
I will file a ticket.
Okay.
We don't have to talk about this today, but at some point, definitely after NU5, we might want to consolidate a place that's not the spec and maybe not a zip, but maybe in the zips repository where we can document some of these network level decision-making things, because there is no Bitcoin network peer-to-peer network specification. There is documentation that maybe we can branch off of, but we don't just have to like document the entire protocol like from the start. We can be like, so we had this thing about behavior and dropping a connection, and we decided that we want it to be this, and we need to put it somewhere, because we can have a Zcash issue, we can have a Zebra issue, and they reference each other and stuff like that, but that's kind of bespoke into the implementation.
There should be a zip saying the differences from, at the very least, the differences from Bitcoin, and we can possibly copy some stuff from the Bitcoin developer reference as well.
Yeah, I was just looking at like, I wonder what we can just like blatantly steal from our upstream parent in terms of specification.
Let me just check what the license is on that. I think it's
good call. On the developer site, they're like, there is no specification and there never will be. There is documentation though, and they're like, the reason is because consensus is what is the real document specification. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like we need whatever you want to call it.
Is this Bitcoin developer reference? Does it have a GitHub backing it?
I
think
do
it
not
does.
know.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Anyway, but at some point, like it could start as a zip. It's MIT. Oh, that's great. It could start as a zip. It could start as something else, but we probably want like how is this supposed to behave? And we'll have somewhere that's like more like a zip and less like a Zcash or a Zebra D issue on a GitHub repo to answer that question. We'll do that later.
How just out of curiosity, and this is, I guess, aimed at Strad, has certainly I seem to recall that he had the unwelcome task of pulling in stuff from upstream. So obviously, we forked at a certain point. We forked the Bitcoin code base back in 2015, 16.
Yeah,
late 2015.
And then have there been changes? Presumably there's been changes to Bitcoin that some of which have been we've pulled in, but has there been any significant changes to the network stack that we have not pulled in?
Oh, plenty.
Okay.
I have, if I share this here. This is the graph that I mentioned last time. So in the Arborist call 2 weeks ago, I showed this that I had locally, and then I spent a couple of hours hacking on GitHub Actions, and now I have a rendered version at this URL that people can just look at if they want to. But up the top here, you'll see a series of PRs that are linked together, and these are all backports from this one here. Is currently trying to backport, let me go see, 7129 from November 2015, which was a direct headers announcement in which was that was an actual change to the network messages in BIP 130, which requires a peer-to-peer version bump if we're going to bring it in, which is why it's currently blocked, because of course network upgrades also bump the peer-to-peer protocol version. But yes, the thing this is what I mentioned before, is like I want to build out this subgraph and figure out what the tree is going to have to be to backport what I want to get, which is at least in the Bitcoin stack, the significant. They've gone through a couple of changes in .12 and .13, which modularized and broke up the network manager and actually made it like a separate connection manager subsystem, rather than it sort of being just net.cpp. And so I would not be surprised, as I said, if in that logic there were significant pieces that altered like stuff in exactly how Bitcoin D and therefore Zcash D would respond to certain behaviors. In general, though, most of the big stuff is like I said, the direct header announcement, where you like that behavior is rather than doing that like inv and then header sort of flow, is just like, here are some headers kind of workflow. And then stuff like compact blocks, Bitcoin's version of it was basically the thing where instead of when a new block comes out sending the entire block of the network, just send the difference between what nodes already have in their mempool and what the block actually contains and things like that. So, there are definitely things that would be useful to have generally, and there are things that would be useful to have for my own sanity.
Yes. Important correction to what I said. I said that that Bitcoin developer site was under MIT. Some of the files are under MIT, but you have to check individually for each file.
Fun.
Yeah, I linked the actual copy and license file in the chat.
Do you use ZenHub at the foundation, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah. The DAG that Strad developed works off some of the ZenHub APIs as well. So yeah, it's a very, very cool tool. I mean, ZenHub's great. It kind of helps you organize things in pipelines well and look across multiple repos, but the DAG has been invaluable as we're kind of moving toward getting the work done for NU5. Dara, your hand's up. And you're muted.
That was just the thing I was saying about the license.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't know when it came up, but anyway, okay. Great. Yeah, and yeah, we can't say how much we appreciate that work Strad did to pull that together. It's been really helpful. Okay, so the next item we had scheduled, and then we can just kind of talk freeform. I'll throw up the NU5 kind of schedule for those that may not be intimately familiar with it. But we're at the ZCon coming up, the virtual ZCon. One of the presentations is a reworking the network upgrade pipeline slot that Deirdre and Taylor and Nate and myself are kind of brainstorming on, what we want to go over there. We only have 30 minutes, so we don't have a ton of time. we were thinking, because again, you know, we can't assume everyone even knows what that is, or if they do, they're familiar with it. So we thought we'd have a little section that talked about, you know, kind of the rationale, like why is there an NUP, and then kind of how it's evolved, you know, over time. So some of the basics, so kind of the rationale, a little bit of the history, the evolution of the NUP, and then, you know, the bulk of the time we would talk about what we might be able to do to improve the NUP, especially in like a multi-node world with Zcash and Zebra, and then, you know, potentially other nodes. And it doesn't just have to be nodes, full nodes. It could be teams working on protocol development funded by major grants, for example, right? So, but that need to coordinate or need to be a part of the coordination points for a given network upgrade. So, so what we met yesterday. We're going to meet again next week, just to kind of chat through, you know, brainstorm ideas. But we wanted to, one thing we're going to do is in that presentation have a call to action of join us on the Arborist calls and talk about protocol development, to be more plugged in. So we're going to promote that for sure. But what we also thought yesterday when we were chatting, it'd be a great idea to kind of just, you know, chat for a few minutes with this group about what might be some things we could rework in the NUP to improve it. Again, considering, you know, multiple protocol teams, et cetera. You know, one of the things is kind of like when you drop into that, you're kind of locked in on that cadence of, okay, here's what goes in the network upgrade. And then you're like, okay, audits are scheduled, and, you know, testnet is targeted. So when you kind of drop in there, you know, the responsible thing to do is to be pretty disciplined and methodical about that. So we're thinking like, how can we rework kind of the front end, like an ideas phase, like what do we want to target, you know, down the road, and how do we kind of work that in as an extension on the NUP. So anyway, I'll just stop talking and just open it up for thoughts and ideas. And I was taking notes yesterday. I'll keep taking notes today. So yeah, would love to hear from anyone and everyone. I see Nate's hand up, but yeah.
Note that now is the time to be suggesting ideas for NU6. Yeah, it's never too early. And it's
exactly.
Not too early in this case.
Right. Yep. You're muted, Nate. There you go.
Yeah, sorry, that ties directly. I was going to ask, when is the first expected Arborist call where we don't need to be fully focused on NU5? Because maybe that seems like a good time to discuss NU6 schedule or any changes we want to make to the process. And that discussion is a little bit different than what should go into NU6, but we need to sort of cover both.
Yeah. So in 4 weeks from today is what we were chatting about earlier, where we should be, you know, largely done with the implementation. We could talk about Testnet Activation Height, which our kind of a strawman schedule had roughly activating July 1st, which is 2 weeks later. So I would say, you know, just again, ballparking, probably the Arborist calls later in July. Like probably the 15th would be, I mean, obviously we would probably want to talk about, hey, how are things going on testnet with NU5? But we could, you know, probably the calls in July, we could start talking about in, you know, NU6 as well, I think.
Yeah, it'd be a good time to,
yeah,
it'd be a good time to be kicking off if there's specific things that need more R&D before they can be feasible. That would be a good time to be setting up collaborations to work on that.
Right. The CSAs, definitely.
Yeah. And TZDs is another one, you know, finishing pieces up like that if we wanted to get bolt in, for instance.
Right. Yeah. And IO is on the call, I believe. Or was, may have had to drop off. But yeah, the last time I chatted with IO at Bolt, they were definitely planning on having ZK channels. You know, they would like to see ZK channels in the the NU6 timeframe. So.
Isn't TZE's linked to that? Isn't there a dependency there?
Yeah, TZEs is the mechanism that basically generalizes like transparent conditional spending of things. You could rewrite the Bitcoin transparent logic as a TZE if you wanted to. It's designed to be pluggable and like, you know, wrappable in that way. This would just be putting, you know, containing bolt within that in a sense, as a mechanism for bringing it in without while making it easier to integrate with consensus rules, basically. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Strad, but I believe the TZEs or zip 222 and that implementation is merged and feature flagged off. So it doesn't activate as part of NU5, but what Bolt or anyone interested in doing anything with TZEs can do is in a testnet is basically activate it, do their development, prototyping, etc., to get ready. And then of course,
the Rust code, that is all done for and has been for a while. The Zcash D side, I don't recall if we got that in.
We'll double check anyway.
No, there's still an open PR for the host logic. We got in the feature flagging that will enable us to land it, but then we got busy with NU5, so we haven't had a chance to land the actual integration. But the Rust side's all there, so that can be, and it wouldn't be too much of a lift once we're done with the NU5 stuff to come back and bring this back into shape.
Oh, that's 4480. Yeah, the PR, right? Okay.
Yeah, we were breaking. It got rather large because we had to do a bunch of back-end work to actually make it integratable. Introducing the modular boundaries that we wanted to exist.
Right. Okay. That answered your question, Nate, in terms of like timing of Arborist calls, but
yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So so back to the kind of general question, just thoughts. I mean, one of the things that I like the way Taylor framed it yesterday was like the ideas phase, which is kind of what we're talking about right now, is begin talking about potentially what might be a good candidate for the next network upgrade, just generally speaking, kind of pulling away from NU6 for a moment, but have adequate time to talk about what might be a good candidate. And that also might be, you know, Dodger, I think it was one of your suggestions last time to have like, you know, some related to Arborist, but not on this call, like kind of working sessions, if you will, for lack of a better term, open pairings. I think we talked about to like, oh, this sounds like it has potential, but we haven't really thought about it that much. Let's kind of meet and hack on it a little bit and flesh it out and determine how big it actually is. Is it a small thing, medium thing, large thing? What are the repercussions? So I think that would be a huge plus. That would be great. Nate?
Yeah, from our conversation yesterday, I felt like what could be very helpful is to have a discussion about what kinds of changes we want or we might want, and then what it takes to get there, without worrying about NU6 or NU6 deadlines, so that we start to build out like multiple strands of a roadmap. And then after we have that, then answering what should be in NU6 might become simpler because we'll know, oh, well, we need these prerequisites, but we all prefer to do this before that, so on and so forth. Yeah.
No, that's excellent. So yeah, kind of abstracting away from the actual NUP for a moment is what are great candidates to do, you know, from a roadmap, and then look at, oh, we can do this big thing and these two smaller things that would fit nicely, you know, in a given time frame. And their sequence, right? Like feature B depends on A, so we should obviously do A first or whatever. I think that would come out pretty clear. Addy, you're go ahead.
Hey everyone. So since we are speaking of ideas, this is something way far off, but I just want to know who might be the person or the team the best to start planning and charting of how a staking proof of stake might work with Zcash.
I mean, I think you're on the right call. So,
Yeah.
yeah, this is the protocol.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been I know everyone has, like, chatting about proof of stake on and off for some time. Super
Yeah.
interesting.
Actually, the
Yeah.
last time I think we had significant chats about it was at the last ZCon.
Yeah.
I remember chatting a bunch with
Yeah.
Zebra devs in the lobby there, waiting for a bus, I think.
I wonder if that kind of topic could be a good candidate for like a group, like basically a special
group.
meeting or
Working
a
group,
meeting
yeah.
series of people focused on that, and their goal is to give like a presentation of the design space and the trade-offs, and maybe propose some designs or something. So that because I feel like every Arborist call, we're gonna need to be syncing up on, like testnet activation or whatever the next, a fair amount of like maintenance stuff that makes it hard to do long-range design work.
Yeah, there's a kind of there's need for the tactical discussions about, right, when's the testnet activation height going to be set, versus, right, how do we move away from the thing that's killing the planet?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think Zcash is in a good place to approach it. Like, for example, Ethereum had to do a lot of changes, test with multiple clients, see the ecosystem, how it syncs up, and then try to migrate the whole platform, and then try to make partial migration and then the full migration. But with Zcash, since I'm aware, there are different pools, shielded pools available. So maybe a staking experiment can be limited to a certain pool. So there are many ideas basically.
That's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea to have a separate series of talks or meetings to present ideas.
Right. Yeah, I totally great. Yeah, great thought, Addy. And so I have two thoughts. One is on that. I've always liked, Zuko said, it's great to have Ethereum. Let's see what happens with Ethereum, because they're right on the verge of doing that. So let's see what we can learn from them generally. I think that would be good. And then also I wanted to say, we were talking about the NUP, like reworking the NUP and ideas. And the NUP is kind of locked in, like, protocol level audits and testnet activations and mainnet activations. But when we're talking about the ideas phase I think we should be talking about ideas, not just like, we want to scope Arborist down to protocol, but we also want to talk about ideas in totality, right? Like, what do we want to see, or what are the great ideas on like the wallet side of things, like with Nighthawk or Unstoppable, or what are we learning with our reference wallet that can inform what the protocol should do or could do? And we have, whether something that's a specific feature of one of the SDKs or Libra Zcash drops into the NUP per se, like with audits and testnet, that kind of thing, it's still kind of coordinated across the ecosystem. I think that would be a huge benefit. And I think we could learn a lot by doing that too.
Yeah. It's also just worth thinking, because if we think like 5 years ago when Zcash was starting, like there really wasn't, I don't think there was any seriously used proof of stake system. You had a bunch of people who had a bunch of chains that had done like small scale things, or like tried things out, taking Bitcoin and switching out various components to the back. But that was around the time that a lot of what are now pretty large proof of stake systems were still, riding the ICO boom to be able to be in testnet for 3 years. What a luxury. But like a lot of those are in production now. So we are in a bit of a different landscape in that, we may not need to wait for Ethereum potentially.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. We certainly should, like if we're surveying that, we should be surveying the full space and considering what potentially we can leverage.
Agreed. Yeah.
We can learn a lot
we probably can pick an existing protocol, so something like if we want to make it compatible with a succinct blockchain in future, we could consider, for example,
Mina.
Arborist Samasico, which is what Coda uses. Mina uses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually quite like the design of that, not just for the succinctness, but for other reasons.
Right. Addy, your hands. Oh, wait, Zuko, you were about to say something, I think, earlier.
Just a comment that we can learn from those designs like Mina and also the ones that are already operating on mainnet at scale like Cosmos and Tezos. But nobody else has transitioned from proof of work to proof of stake yet. That's what I wanted to see Ethereum do.
That is true. Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. Addy, your hand was. Oh,
I think
go ahead.
maybe the most practical approach would be to run a side chain for a while, and sort of allow ZEC to be used for staking in the same way that you would sort of allow transfers to a side chain.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, Addy, I saw your hand up earlier. I don't know if that was just still up from before, or if you had something else.
Yeah, just a follow-up comment on the work for mobile SDKs. I think most of this year, or at least the next 6 months, will be busy in transitioning to the NU5 upgrade and the Orchard address spec, and then improvising the efficiencies and ironing out any bugs for mobile transactions. And I think after that, we'll see what other features we want to jam in. But on the Nighthawk side, I can say that we are trying to also push the work forward with partners like Flexa.
Right.
So that third-party
Awesome.
integration going on. Yep.
Right. Very good. Dodger?
Yeah, one thing, Dara mentioned the idea of experimenting with a sidechain. One thing that we talked about previously was using proof of stake or a different consensus mechanism. I think we were actually talking about notaries at the time, so I guess proof of authority, to improve finality on the Zcash chain, and that was an idea that I was quite a fan of, and I think that's something that we should definitely think about and incorporate into those discussions.
Yeah, I was thinking of the sidechain idea just to experiment and make sure that it works before we add it to consensus on the main chain.
Right.
Yeah. But you could, also like gradually bring it in by having it do useful work in that sense to those people who need it. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
So someone mentioned on the coal planning channel on Discord whether there was going to be a code name for NU5. I think there's not going to be a separate code name, but is there going to be a logo?
They're going to be T-shirts. That's the really important question.
Well, no, there will definitely be
T-shirt.
There will definitely be T-shirts. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I saw
the survivors.
Yeah.
Robot Zuko.
Yeah, I survived NU5 or something like that. Would be good. But Josh was on the call earlier. I saw that he dropped off. But yeah, we demanded T-shirts last time. Like I put in like some internal slide decks, a mock-up of my own T-shirt, and kept throwing it up every presentation until Josh actually got the one that Dara's wearing right now, that design done. So we can find multiple ways to pressure him into getting us T-shirts.
And whilst we're supposed to be two independent organizations,
send them your way.
I'm not averse to
Wait, isn't there like a Zeme team now? Maybe like the T-shirt owners.
Hey, as long as they're the high quality T-shirts, I don't care who does them. if it's those super thick cotton ones that weigh like 5 pounds, I think I'll pass. So
these are really comfy.
Those are good, yeah. So
we're agreed that we're not nicknaming NU5 Orchard because the Orchard pool is being deployed during it.
Correct.
Because we learned that lesson from Sapling.
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
We're gonna end up referring to it though as Orchard anyway.
But
no, we're not. I have been able to keep them very separate in my mind. Just as a result of them having different names. It's a great improvement.
We've pretty much called it NU5 to everybody and in everything we've written so far. So it's probably just going to continue having that name.
Right. Yeah.
So shall we make that decision now and say that it's going to be called NU5?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what, everyone's kind of thinking already. Yeah.
But with an awesome logo.
Yes.
That is not just a 5, and not having just a 5. It has to be something visual.
Right.
Well, I mean, you get all the all those conferences that we've been going to for this last year, right? That they're always like a name version. So
well, how about each zip has a logo or a mascot?
Oh,
It could be a veritable forest full of creatures, and
I could just see Deirdre and Dara deciding to reject zips because their logo's not good enough.
Does not spark joy.
I would never do anything like that.
All right, very good. All right. Anyone have anything else? I know Deirdre has a hard stop.
Yeah, I have a hard stop. I've been really quickly Googling like planting an orchard, creating an orchard, verbs, like code names for the creation of an orchard. And one of them says orchard establishment. So we could call it NU5.
Vetoed.
Code name establishment in which we establish an orchard.
Vetoed, replaced by Anna Tree.
I thought we were supposed to be mildly anti-establishment.
Yes.
NU5, the flood.
Just don't reference Pollard anywhere at all, and whatever we come up with. Yeah. So.
No, Pollard is the next shielded pool.
That's still a sore spot. All right.
NU5 drainage. All right, I gotta hop off.
Okay.
Thank you all.
See you, Deirdre.
Bye.
All right. Okay. Unless anyone has anything else, I'm going to throw up my screen again just to have. Go ahead, Strad.
Yeah, I'm just the. I think the only other thing that I can think of at the moment that is going to be relevant for cross teams is so I'm currently working through an upgrade to the FF crate and that tree of crates because as you may recall, there was some fun with BitVec and Funty and things that you probably encountered over in Zebraland and getting all those dependencies right. But 0.20 also had a significant like 20% performance regression. So we've avoided pulling it in the Libra Zcash crates until now, but of course we've just been using it in Orchard, so we had to verify them. Fortunately, the latest BitVec actually solves that performance problem and appears to all actually be slightly faster than what we were at previously, possibly all the const generic stuff that it switches to. So I'm bringing that in, but that's going to mean that there's a breaking bump, a minor bump because it's pre 1.0, but a breaking bump to that stack of crates in the near future. So we'll probably want to coordinate on that for things like the red Jub crate and so on.
Yeah, so same timeline as before, again, for folks that may not be quite as familiar with the NU5 schedule. We're obviously, here a little past mid-May. We're looking to activate on testnet around the 1st of July. So the 17th when we should have, that's when we've kind of targeted the Zcash testnet release for, which would set activation height. So 4 weeks from today is the 17th of June. We could kind of target that to talk about a specific activation height that we wanted to shoot for. And then a couple of updates on the audits. The Kedit spec audit is going on right now. Yeah, they're making pretty good progress on that. And the implementation audits for both the NCC and Kedit are roughly scheduled to kind of, overlap with that release mid-June and then toward the throughout the last half of June. So, any questions about that from anyone? All right. Okay, well, look, that was the scheduled topics. Anyone have anything else they want to go over, or we can always wrap up a few minutes early today?
Yeah, let's wrap up early. And,
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. I think we're
Okay.
making
That was
good
great,
progress.
y'all.
Yep. All right, everybody, have a
Bye-bye.
good rest of the day. Good Friday and a great weekend. We'll catch up next week.